All right. Thanks, Joe. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Really excited to be talking about some of this stuff with you all today. As Joe said, we'll be talking today about tools for building really flexible, interactive landing pages in Drupal. This is something I spend a lot of time working on with clients, something I spend a lot of time working on with the team here at Aten, and something I'm really excited to share with you all. So let me stop video here and share my screen. Captioning. There we go. Okay, great. Yeah, let's get started. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. As Joe said, please raise your hand if you have any trouble seeing into the content or hearing any of this. Again, today we're going to be talking about and demoing some really visual interactive tools for building landing pages in Drupal, specifically with a module called Layout Paragraphs. There are really just four things we want to cover. The first is why layout paragraphs. So my team here at Aten, we spend a lot of time working with this module specifically. We're going to talk about why. That'll be pretty quick. Next, we'll demo an existing website. We're going to use the AtenDesignGroup.com website to show how this works in action. We are then going to demo a simple new website. So take a look at something that I actually just threw together this morning as an example of what layout paragraphs looks like right out of the box. And then finally, hopefully have plenty of time for questions and conversations at the end of all this. I'm thinking the demo piece should take about 20 minutes or so, and then leave plenty of time again for questions. Hopefully be wrapped up here at a little past half past the hour. So definitely have some flexibility there if we have questions or conversation that we want to keep going with. So thanks again for being here. Real quick, Joe, can you post that poll? We just had a couple of quick questions. Would love to get a sense for people's experience with layout paragraphs, existing experience with layout paragraphs. While you're doing that, I'll jump in with why we're big fans of this module in the first place. So the big thing that layout paragraphs provides, and the most important piece for us, is expressive drag and drop content authoring. Provides a really fantastic experience for the folks who are actually writing or creating content for the web in Drupal. Second, layout paragraphs preserves a structured content approach. So we're not sacrificing structured content, which is huge from a content management perspective. We're not sacrificing structured content when using layout paragraphs. Third, layout paragraphs leverages familiar workflow and configuration. So it works the same way other fields already work in Drupal. It uses systems that we are all already familiar with. Fields, field widgets, field formatters. If you're familiar with these things, if you do much site building in Drupal, these are all things you're familiar with. And so you're kind of by default familiar with the layout paragraphs workflow and approach. And then finally, there's no migration necessary. If you're using paragraphs already on a Drupal 8 or 9 site, layout paragraphs will work right out of the box with the setup that you have. It just adds additional flexibility to the interface. So that's a quick breakdown of the major reasons that we use this approach. Let me switch over and we'll jump in with a demo of how this works in action. So again, this is the Aten Design Group website, our agency's website. I'm already logged in as an administrator. I'm going to bounce over to the admin content page and create content. We're going to use a case study today as an example of the kind of dynamic, unique types of content that we want to create. For any of you who may have caught the lightning talk earlier this week at DrupalCon, a lot of this is going to be a repeat, but we'll go into a little bit more depth on how layout paragraphs works. I'm going to quickly give this a title. 2 customizations on our site specifically to be aware of. One, we are using the same theme for the front end and back end, which is why this content creation form looks very similar to the front end of the site. I'm going to skip all of these not mandatory fields, leave this as an idea. which keeps that as an unpublished piece of content. The second customization is we've separated out the layout paragraphs field onto its own tab. You don't have to do this. It's not how layout paragraphs works by default. You could do this with any field you want to from the editing, from the edit forms or the node edit forms. We just wanted to have the layout paragraph field itself separated for simplicity for our authors and our users. Okay, so when you first land on this screen and nothing has been created, you have a single option, this plus option to add new content. Opening plus, we have this single option for a section. Go to create a new section. Core layout discovery is making these layouts available. I'm going to stick with one column. We'll hit save. It immediately drops that section in again, a really visual, interactive way with the ability to add a section above, a section below, or to add content into the center region. And you can see that the options when you click into the region are different. Here we have the ability to choose from some of the components that are in our component library, or it's really paragraph types that are available to us. And I'm going to start with this masthead, which is what we use for the title of all of our case studies. Throw a title in here and throw a subhead. We can add 2 images. I'll just do a quick search for Raleigh. Just grab a couple of images from the library here, place those. I'm going to skip the URL field. This really should be a link to their site, but I'll just skip that for time's sake. Immediately drops that content again in a really visual, interactive way. So we can very clearly stay connected to and see what we're working on. That's looking pretty good. I think it would look a little better if we gave this its own background color. So clicking into that section, I'm just going to open up the color option or the background color option, choose this dark blue, and then add this special class we've created that creates this dark mode or light on dark theme. And again, you can see those changes immediately take effect. All of this can be dragged around on the page. There's these interactive edit and delete buttons, and I'll show a little bit more of that as we progress through here. Let's create another section. We'll stick with one column again. This time I'm going to add a text block. Just quickly copy and paste some text in, hit save. Again, immediately drops in a very interactive visual way right in front of us. Add another text block. As I mentioned before, these can be dragged around, so reordered. You could drag this into any other region on your page. So this can be dragged anywhere within any of these sections. Another feature of layout paragraphs, unlike Layout Builder, at least I believe Layout Builder does not support this. With layout paragraphs, you can edit your section and choose a different layout. So if I decide I actually want to put this in a 2-column layout, I can do that. And then drag my second text block over into that right-hand column. And again, this just provides a really seamless, interactive experience for authors. Another feature of this, if I want to go back to a 1-column and hit save, and it happened there before I even had a chance to show it. So let's go back to 2-column. And I'll drag this block over to the right-hand column, hit edit. If I choose a column that has fewer regions than the section I started with, I get this dialog that says move orphaned items. And you can actually choose which region we want to move the orphaned items. In this case, anything in that right-hand column would be orphaned. We're just going to let that go into the content region. And so that's where it puts it. All right, I think that was looking a little better as a 2-column. So I'll go back to that. And we'll keep going. Add a new section. One thing that we have done quite a bit of on our site is creating these special formatting classes to apply style to blocks of text. And again, something that works really well with layout paragraphs is you can see that style immediately applied. So if I drop into here, a title, yeah, leave that how it is. Drop in here a title with an ordered list and hit save. That looks pretty good. But let's change that using one of these classes that we've applied. called intuitively simply 3 items. And that immediately applies the style. Now, there's nothing particularly tied to layout paragraphs that's driving that. I think the powerful piece with layout paragraphs is that you can immediately see that change take effect. So there's no abstraction or no separation between the content that a user is creating and what that content will look like in the front end. Keep going here. I'm going to create another one column section. Again, we'll choose reversed as the theme. So we have that dark section, and then I'm just going to drag again the stylized block of text. This time, we'll apply that style right while we're adding it. And again, you can see how what you're creating is represented immediately in this really interactive way. We've just got a few more sections that we'll work through here before I'll transition over and show what this looks like on a kind of a vanilla, much simpler new website. Grab some text here, drop this in on the right. Add an image on the left. One other really powerful feature of layout paragraphs is you can create really dynamic, rich landing pages from a very simple subset of components or paragraph types. So we're only using 6 different paragraph types, whereas in the past we might have had a paragraph for each possible lockup combination. Once you combine layout with paragraphs, it just makes the authoring experience really powerful while also keeping it very simple. As I said before, all of this can be dragged around, so I'll put the image on the right, drag the text to the left, and we'll keep going. Again, just a couple more sections here. I'm going to show you all how this works with something a little bit more interactive. Again, choosing this reversed light on dark theme. This time, 3 columns. We'll add some text into the center here. Whoops, I did too much copying. So we'll add text into the center, and then let's drop a slideshow into this footer region. Again, as we create these images, you'll see these dropped in place in a really interactive, simple way. We can play with the slideshow. I mean, it looks exactly how it would look on the front end, maybe with just a slight bit more padding to support some of these interface elements, but otherwise exactly how it would look and behave in the front end. If we wanted to, we could click edit to go back into that slideshow and rearrange those images right here, again, in a very interactive way. Add 1 or 2 more sections here. We'll again, choose a background and this reversed theme. Again, add an image. Search our image library. Place and save. And again, you can see how simple and quick it is to add media assets, move them around with some layouts. Again, if I wanted to, I could easily drag this up to a completely different region of the page. One other feature that's kind of worth looking at as we scroll through here, we have definitely kept accessibility in mind in building layout paragraphs. Tabbing through the entire interface works pretty well. When you land on handles, so if I click back to the handles have now been selected or highlighted on the focus. If I hit enter, it now enters keyboard mode, and I can move this piece of content around and put it anywhere on the site. So I can easily move that around. Sometimes that's just a faster way to move content around than using the keyboard anyways. All right, I'm going to add 2 more sections here, and then we're going to move on. Do another 2 column. This time on the left-hand side, I'm going to drop a quote, which is just another paragraph type. A quote has some text. It has the individual's name for attribution, person's title. I'm going to give this a background color as well, though. So we'll go back to this dark blue. Again, call this reversed and hit save. And once again, immediately this paragraph with a very unique presentation dropped in place in a very interactive way. I'll add a simpler text block over here to the right. Layout paragraphs works really well for writers. You know, in the moment, you can decide if something seems more important and really belongs up on the page. I can easily use these buttons to bounce it up further, or again, drag it anywhere. Here, we're just moving it up further on the page. So a lot of flexibility, really interactive, again, highly visual for an editing environment. I'm going to add a quick conclusion here at the bottom. Let's see here. Let's do another 2 column. And this time, choose a background color, but also a background image. And reversed again. While that background image is loading, we'll add in a simple text block here. Give this a background color as well. Actually, I'll skip that piece for now. Great. So you can at least see how, get an idea of how that's working. We have classes also available for adding padding. All of this, of course, is customizable and should be customized to the needs of each individual project. If I just add, oh, so padded is not the right class. Give this a shot. Okay, there we go. Too many padding classes. So that adds padding to that block. And all of that is not, again, those are not specifically features of layout paragraphs. The piece that is a feature of layout paragraphs is what allows you to see your changes immediately take effect. And again, keep that close connection between writing the content, seeing the content, making choices about how your content's presented, and being able to create these really dynamic digital stories or digital pages. A couple other things just to take a look at in terms of features here. There is also this disabled items section. So if you're working on something, you're not quite happy with the way it's turned out, but you don't want to throw it away entirely, you can drop that down into disabled items. And when I save this page, this block will not be shown in the front end, but when I come back to edit, it will be there for later. So it's just a way to kind of preserve items that you might be working on. I'll hit save real quick. Now that piece of content is saved. And again, you can see how closely the front end mirrors what we were doing in the back end. And it just keeps that connection, again, between the content and the author as it's being created. Okay, that's about it for a demo of how this works on an actual live site. I'm going to spend a few minutes now just transitioning over to how this is configured. So looking at what modules are turned on, what the configuration options are, and how this is configured on the field on the case study content type. So first, we'll just go over to extend to see the list of modules that are on the site. Do a quick search for layout paragraphs. You can see that layout paragraphs is installed. Layout paragraphs depends on the paragraphs module and also layout discovery. I think those are the only two dependencies of layout paragraphs. From here, we can bounce over to the configuration screen. There are a couple of configuration options, global configuration options. We can choose if we want to show paragraph labels, which will show the paragraph type as a small label in the editing interface, or also show layout labels, which would show the layout type as a small label in the editing interface. We have both of those turned off for us. Those layouts are so simple and the components are so simple, it seemed an unnecessary step. We also have this layout sections tab where we can configure which paragraphs should be used as layout sections. There are actually two places that this can be managed, but we wanted a central place where all paragraph types would be shown, and where you could really easily choose what columns or what layouts should be available for each paragraph that you're using as a section. So you can see here we have this one section paragraph type that we've checked use as a layout section. And we have the available layouts from the system, and we've chosen the ones that we want to be available as options. The other place where you can manage those same options is under structure paragraph types. Layout paragraphs is a paragraph behavior. So if you click edit on, let's see where's section here. If you click edit on a particular paragraph, you'll have the option to turn on layout paragraphs. You only need to do this for the paragraphs that you want to use as a section paragraph, as a paragraph that has layouts applied. You would check the layout paragraphs option. And then once you've checked that, you have the ability to choose which layouts from the system you want to be available with that layout section. Let's take a look at how to actually turn this on or how to use this for a content type. Again, I'm going to look at case studies. Go to manage fields. We'll take a look at the content field, which is the paragraph reference. This is just a typical paragraph reference field. So this is a entity reference field within all of the paragraph types that we want to be available for a case study have been selected here. That's really all that's required from a field setting perspective. If we go back out to the case study, manage form display, once you turn on the layout paragraphs module, layout paragraphs will be an option for your paragraph reference field. So you simply choose layout paragraphs, and that's it. And then it'll work in the editing interface. I mentioned before that we singled out, or we isolated out this one field, the content field, which is using layout paragraphs on its own tab. And the way we did that is creating a standalone form view mode or form mode, the edit content form, just with the much simpler form. All it has on it is the layout paragraphs field. Layout paragraphs widgets have a number of options. Click in to take a look at these. First is the preview view mode. So you can change what view mode all of your paragraphs should use to be previewed in the backend. So if for some reason you wanted to add some customization for the way things are previewed, you can certainly do that. And you would do that by creating a new view mode and then toggling that or targeting that here. Paragraphs can be nested. In fact, you can nest layout sections up to 10 levels deep. So you could have a layout within a layout within a layout. In this case, we're not allowing that on our site, so it's set to 0. And then finally, you can choose to require paragraphs to be inside a layout or not to require this. If you require this, then as you're adding content, you will not be able to add a paragraph unless there's a section container already created. So you have to create a section first. That's what we saw in that workflow. We just created that case study a minute ago. We had to start with a section. We could then create paragraphs within the section. This widget works just as well, not requiring sections. And for that matter, if you uncheck this option, this widget can be used as a replacement for the default paragraph widget. And it still gives you all the same drag and drop options, just without necessarily having to use layouts at all. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that if anybody's wondering about that at the end here. That is just about everything in terms of how this is configured. Oh, I guess the last piece is just looking at the display of this field. Go to the full content view mode. And all you have to do to make this show up correctly is then choose layout paragraphs as the formatter for your piece of content. And that's what's going to correctly assemble those paragraphs using the layout that you've created in the edit form. And that's it in terms of how to configure layout paragraphs and get it running on your own site. I'm going to now just transition over really quickly and show what this looks like on a much simpler vanilla site. Again, this is something I spun up just earlier today, I believe running Drupal 9, just in a sandbox with Pantheon. I'm going to quickly bounce over to the Manage Content screen, add new content, add a basic page. We have replaced the default body field with a layout paragraphs field, which is just a paragraph reference field. And this is what it would look like if you hadn't done any custom theming to make this look more like the front end, or if you hadn't isolated out the field onto its own screen as we had showed before. When I hit plus, this has also been configured using the option I showed just a second ago to not require paragraphs inside of a section. So I could just as easily simply add a new text option here without a layout first. Again, still with all of the drag and drop options, but I also can create a new section directly below that. And then within the section, add content exactly the way that we were just looking at. All of the other options that we were looking at before would be available. Again, the look and feel slightly different when this has not been themed to look like the front end. Okay, this concludes the demo piece of this. I would love to answer any questions. I think we still have a few minutes to answer questions or have any conversations. So again, thanks everybody for being here. We'd love to answer any questions.
Awesome. So Justin, we have a few questions that come in, and if anybody who has any other questions on the presentation, please use the Q&A feature and drop your questions in there. We'll have time to answer some more questions. The first question is, did you have to create the column layout options and set up their associated stylings like margin padding, or are they set up out of the box?
That's a great question. On the simple site that I was just showing, those are available out of the box. So these layout options, this is just using the layouts that actually ship with core. And layouts, typically, a layout is composed of a template for the layout, which would have the HTML column structure, as well as structural CSS for making those columns take up the correct amount of space or lay out correctly. So typically that's all bundled together as a single layout. As long as your layout correctly contains the layout template and CSS for adding that structure, then it'll just work. And there are a collection of layouts available out of the box in core. I'm happy to take a look at what those are.
Awesome. Well, if that answers your question, Anna, please let us know. And if you have a follow-up, please use the Q&A. We'd love to answer any other questions you have. Another question about nested paragraphs. We're currently having issues where nested paragraphs need a patch to fully support translation, which is making upgrades difficult. How well does this work with translation, especially in the case of nested paragraph elements?
Yeah, that's a great question. So layout paragraphs currently supports synchronous translations in a similar way that paragraphs by default support synchronous translations. One piece that will make translations much simpler with layout paragraphs is that you should no longer need to nest paragraphs. The whole idea behind layout paragraphs is that you no longer need to have paragraphs within paragraphs in order to accomplish kind of structure that's how we used to do things, is by nesting paragraphs within paragraphs to put them in a particular column or make them, laid out in a particular way. This gets around that. And so the structure is very flat, which in turn simplifies the translation process. We're also working on an approach to asynchronous translation. It's going to be a little while, but there are a few projects that we're working on that are going to drive that forward, and some we're really excited about.
Okay, awesome. And again, if there's any follow-ups, please, Amanda, let us know. We have a question here from Brian. Can the background color options be limited to specific colors by the site style guide?
Brian, great question. Yes, they can, but that's not really a feature of layout paragraphs. So the module that I was actually showing, or the way this is working on our site is, back there. The way this is working on our site is just with one of the color modules provided in Contrib. I think it's just the color field module, and that has configuration options for what color widget to use. And depending on the color widget, you can provide your own palette of colors. So I would definitely check that module out. I believe it's just called color field, but that's what's providing this field. And this is just, again, what we're looking at here is the edit form for a paragraph. So everything in here is just a field. All of these options are just fields on that paragraph. And you can use whatever fields you want to.
Awesome. Brian, let us know if you have any follow-ups. Question from Elda is, can we configure it for existing paragraphs with custom styles?
Yeah, absolutely. This layout paragraphs definitely works for existing paragraph types. I'd have to know a little more about what you mean by custom styles. There are a variety of ways that you could apply custom styles to existing paragraph types via fields. This is using the classy field, which is actually, I believe, going to be deprecated soon, but there's a bunch of other options too for how to manage that. Layout paragraphs really controls the interface for how you manipulate the paragraphs, and that immediate kind of what you see is what you get experience. Anything you do to attach style to a paragraph should be immediately available in layout paragraphs. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think the next question I've got here is just about this looks like the Gutenberg WordPress, the WordPress editor. For those of you who may not be familiar with Gutenberg, Gutenberg does not support structured data. Does layout paragraphs?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one reason that we have invested in this approach. Is layout paragraphs is simply using paragraph reference fields. So it absolutely uses the same structured content approach that the same approach to structured content that paragraphs do. So paragraphs, of course, paragraph types are structured content. They're fieldable, etc. So the storage for this works very differently than for Gutenberg. And it is as flexible as paragraphs, but then also ties in this layout component.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, those are all the questions that we have right now. If anybody has any other questions, just start typing them away. Otherwise, we're going to oh, another question's coming in. I'll give Brian, I'll give you a minute to answer that question. Justin, I get a lot of questions about layout paragraphs versus layout builder. Do you mind just diving into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest distinction, I think that the easiest way to get a sense for how they're different is to work with both and to play with layout builder, use layout builder to lay out content pages, to build landing pages, etc., and then try that alongside layout paragraphs. We have experienced layout builder as a really powerful site building tool. It's a really great way to kind of templatize how content is rendered across an entire site, and is a fantastic replacement for things like panels or panelizer or context way back with Drupal 6 and 7. Layout Builder does a great job of providing this very visual way of laying out content structure across the site. So saying that you want all blog pages to have a main left column with the body field and a right column with navigation, etc. Layout Paragraphs is really a content writing tool. It's a tool for authors and writers who want to be able to very quickly, easily create flexible content in a very dynamic way. It has a big focus on interactivity, simplicity, speed of adding content. So those are some of the ways that those two are different.
Okay, awesome. Well, your timing's perfect because Brian's question just arrived. And we have another question that just came in. And again, if there are any other questions out there, we're here for another 20 minutes. A question from Brian is, can we configure which paragraph types can be put into specific layout paragraph boxes? For instance, slideshows can't be put into either column or of a 2-column section.
Yeah, another great question, Brian. So there is a module called Layout Paragraphs Restrictions that extends layout paragraphs to add that functionality. We are also working on adding this feature directly into layout paragraphs. It is on the roadmap. We're still a little ways away from doing that. But for now, I would say check out that module and know that this is something we're hoping to move into layout paragraphs at some point.
All right. Question from Elda. Any conflicts if using Bootstrap with the way layout paragraphs works? We set up width for columns. I don't understand the context after the question, but any conflicts if you're using the Bootstrap theme?
There shouldn't be, none that I know of. I mean, so layouts can provide layout plugins, or layouts can be bundled with layout plugins. And I believe Bootstrap's layouts are bundled with a Bootstrap layout plugin. The plugin determines how a layout is rendered, and how options, it provides configuration options, etc. So I think some of those, I believe the Bootstrap layout plugin provides a number of those options. That should all work seamlessly with layout paragraphs. And actually, click edit here, when we're looking at a section that is a paragraph that has layout capability, there is this layout configuration option, and that's going to show all of the options that are being provided by that layout plugin. So Elda, that should show the options that are coming from the Bootstrap plugin, where you can actually say, you would be able, the options in this form would be different than what you're seeing here. They would match what you're talking about. So you would be able to set up the widths for your columns right here with this form. It should just work.
Okay. Well, awesome. I want to thank you, Justin, for presenting the webinar today.